So this is the part of the course where we're coming down the boulevard and we're going to turn left onto Wertz Avenue. So you're going to see teams lined up, jockeying for position, and hitting the bottom of Wertz Avenue pretty aggressively. It's a faster section, of course. It's a flat, the slightly downhill entrance to the Wertz Avenue climb. So Wertz Avenue is a very typical Kanawha County, Central West Virginia climb in that it starts more gradually, unlike the Bridge Road climb where racers are going to get hit right off the bat with super steep pitches. This climb is more shallow at the bottom, a little bit wider, and then as the climb progresses, it gets more narrow and it gets pitchier and pitchier and pitchier. So what's also interesting about this climb is this is as close to a holler as this race is going to get to. Appalachian folklore with the holler there, meaning we have really steep mountains on either side. Riders are going to be totally protected from the wind. Wind is not going to be an issue on this climb or even on this section of the road. Now, when we get to the top, when we get to the ridge, it's very likely that they'll be back into the wind. But through here, completely sheltered from wind and really from the sun as well. It's a very narrow section of road. And what we'll see is we'll see a lot of teams really able to jockey for position early on. As they're coming down the boulevard towards this climb, they're going to have about 2.5 miles of wide open road. So teams are going to be able to jockey for position. They're going to be able to move their riders, helping each other draft, move the riders to the front so that when they hit some of the steeper pitches of this climb, they're in good position. So as this climb progresses, again, it gets a little bit steeper and a little bit steeper until we get to a pinch point where the road is very narrow and then really kicks up. So this is the next section of climb where it changes. The gradient gets steeper. The racers that have maybe been tasked with setting the pace are going to start to peel off a little bit. The racers that were a little bit overzealous at the bottom of the climb, they're going to start feeling it. The gradient doesn't really show very well here on the screen, but we're getting into the 9-10% gradient here. The road also narrows. It's a car width and a half length or width apart, as you can tell with that car passing me. So this is where a lot of separation could start to happen. This would be a really good point to attack in the race as it gets a little bit steeper as we get closer to the ridge top. Again, the road is very narrow here, so if a racer is not in good position, if the team hasn't helped them get in good position by now, it's going to be very difficult for that racer to move around to make better position for themselves. The road's super narrow, it's super steep. We're probably in the 10-12% range of gradient at this point as we head towards the ridge top. So this is the top of the Wertz climb, and this is the section of the course that, for bike race enthusiasts, bike race nerds, I say that affectionately, um, is going to find fascinating. This is a brand new course; it's never been raced, and you get to the top of this very difficult climb, and you do not have a descent right away. We have a ridge top that we have to go across. It has left and right turns. It's fairly exposed. Wind is probably going to be a factor in this. So what's really fascinating is you've come off of this climb and you could potentially, as a racer, get a fairly significant gap. You've got some twists and turns across this ridge line before a really fast descent. But what makes it interesting is that it's a gambler's paradise right here. If you're a breakaway artist, if you're an escape artist, you can risk it. You can go all in. This is not that far from the finish. It's also not that far from the next climb, the Bridge Road climb. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the racers take on this section of road, because on the one hand, you can get out of sight. If you get enough of a gap, you have a fast descent and you get into the downtown streets of the city of Charleston, and you can get out of sight, out of mind. The same token, though, is it's going to take a pretty significant gap to be able to hold off the field as you get to this downhill. The downhill is a really fast downhill. The first part of it is on this 2-lane road. A solo rider is going to reach 40, 45 miles an hour for parts of it. The field, when it's together, is going to go a little bit faster. When you come off of this 2-lane road, you're going to turn left onto an open highway, a big 2-lane. Well, it's a 4-lane highway. The race will use 2 lanes of it, but a big highway, big shoulder, big exposure, and it's going to take a lot of power to hold the field off as you get down to the boulevard, back down to the boulevard that you've already been on, and then riding into town. So what's interesting is that part's interesting, and then when you get to the boulevard, you could potentially have the opposite wind that you had whenever you're going into Wertz Avenue. Typically, as you're riding towards Wertz Avenue on the boulevard that time of year, you're going to be going into a headwind. So if you come off of this downhill, you have a good gap. You can have a little bit of a tailwind as you go into the city of Charleston, wrap around the downtown streets, really take on the energy of the crowd before you go back up Bridge Road. But weather is weather. Who knows what it could be? And if you come off of this downhill, you have a gap, but then you turn into a headwind, a mile and a half of just straight road headwind, you're just going to be sitting there for the field to look at you and very easily pace themselves to roll you back, to reel you back in. So this part of the course is actually one of the more dynamic sections of the course. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.